Hi, Zach Reiser here, and welcome back to another bass effects review video. Today I'm going to be getting into the Fairfield Circuitry Meet Maude analog delay. I haven't done a review of an analog delay yet. There are a lot of them out there, everything from simple pedals like the MXR Carbon Copy all the way up to incredibly complicated pedals like the Moog 104. The Meet Maude is kind of right in between, so it gives you a lot of options, but it's still easy to dial in some cool sounds. Let's jump into it. Here's my bass's dry tone, Dingwall ABZ 6-string on both pickups. Okay, let's get into the Meet Maude. So I have the volume and mix roughly at about unity gain, the feedback right in the middle, the tone is fully open, compression, modulation are off, and I'm starting with the delay time kind of in the middle of its range. Here's the Meet Maude. So you can hear already it's a very, very dark delay. This is as bright as it gets, pretty much, with the tone knob fully open, and it's incredibly dark already. We'll get into the tone knob in a minute, but first let's show the range of the delay time. Full length, this is around that 500 millisecond range. This long range, you start hearing a little bit of that chip noise, which is kind of the fun of analog delays. They're a little bit dirty. Let's go to kind of that slapback zone. So this is around, I don't know, 75 milliseconds-ish. So you've heard the range of the delay time, like I said, roughly 50 to 500 milliseconds. Let's take a look at that tone knob for a second. So here's this delay time with the tone fully open. And just to accentuate this, I'm going to put a little bit of overdrive on because it'll bring some more high end in. Okay. Now let's roll that tone knob back to about 1 o'clock. Even darker. Also notice that the feedback is interconnected with the tone. So as I roll the tone knob back forward, it actually, or roll the tone knob back, it makes it sound like the feedback is less because that top end's going away. So I can actually crank the feedback. And even though the feedback is really high, it's not going into self-oscillation, because that tone knob is rolled back. So let's roll the tone knob all the way down. And now we just get this kind of cool sub-drone. I wouldn't use this sound too often, but for fun, let's crank the feedback all the way. So you can hear it's barely even noticeable on bass. Now, the funny thing is this is feedbacking like crazy right now. You just can't hear it because of the low-pass filter. So turn the tone knob back up, and we're back into self-oscillation. Okay, getting into the compression knob. The compression knob is a very subtle feature, but it's very cool. This is the same compression function as their Accountant compressor that Fairfield makes. I love the Accountant. I've had one on my board forever. Basically, 0 is light compression, 1 is heavy compression, and it's only compressing the delayed signal, only compressing the repeats. It doesn't compress your dry signal at all. But it can do a lot of things. It can balance out the repeats a little bit so that they're kind of more present, more noticeable, but at the same time, since it's compressed, as you play more and more, it keeps its dynamics steady so it doesn't get in the way of your signal. So I like it if you want to hear the delay, but you also want it to get out of your way. It also controls the feedback so that you can get self-oscillation that doesn't go crazy out of control. So let's kind of show that. Let's show what self-oscillation sounds like with light compression, and then I'll show what it sounds like with heavy compression. So I'm going to turn the feedback up to about 3 o'clock. And here's some self-oscillation. Okay, now let's hear something similar but with the compressor on. So subtle effect, it just changes kind of the tone of the repeats a little bit. It also changes the dynamics of the repeats. Now for me, I like the compression on pretty much all the time, and I'm going to leave it on for most of the rest of the video here. So right now there's no modulation on. Let's turn on light modulation. Really, really pretty modulation on modulation number 1. Just a real subtle chorusing effect. Also, the modulation characteristics I find are more noticeable when the compressor's on as well. Let's increase the delay time. Let's try cutting it back to slapback range with that modulation on. The short delay times with the modulation can almost get you into kind of that warped vinyl sound, or that kind of subtle vibrato sound, especially on modulation number 2. Just as a quick reminder, no modulation. Modulation number 1. Really, really pretty. Let's crank the delay time all the way again one more time. And just for fun, I'm going to put a 5th on with the hog. So without the Meet Maude, this is the sound I'm getting. And now with delay time maxed and modulation on number 1. Out of the way of my signal quite nicely. So if I play something a little busier, you hear it on the end of the tail, but it really doesn't get in the way on the run. Very cool. All right, let's turn the hog off. Let's try modulation number 2. So this is almost a random modulation, really giving you some of that kind of old tape or warped record sound. Just as another real cool feature you can do, if you turn the delay time all the way down, so now you have an incredibly short delay, now you get essentially a vibrato pedal. And if you turn the feedback down to 1, like that, And I'm going to turn the mix up a little bit. Now you get this very vintage sounding vibrato. Which is even more noticeable with higher feedback. Another cool way I like to use this is with a sub signal. So for instance, here's the Boss OC2 by itself. And then with this kind of vibrato setting. Kind of gives you that detuned oscillator sound a little bit. More noticeable even would be if I put on a gated fuzz after the OC2. So this is OC2 into a gated fuzz into the Meet Maude on this vibrato setting. Cool sound. Let's go back to a slapback setting, another setting while I have my kind of synth setup on here. I'm going to put on a downward envelope, so OC2 gated fuzz into a downward envelope on the Manta. And I love doing this into slapbacks. So here's a slapback delay setting with all this running into it. A little shorter, and I'm turning the mix down too. Really nice way to add a little bit of ambience to a synth sound. All right, let's go back to just an overdriven signal. And I'm going to leave the modulation and compression where they're at. I'm going to turn the delay time all the way maxed out, though, just so you can hear a little bit of this in more of a soloing role. So here is kind of a run without the delay on. Little tube drive from the Source Audio Aftershock. And now here's with the Fairfield on this particular setting. Such a good textural analog delay. A lot of times analog delays, their signal kind of gets in the way too much for my taste. But this is really nice. I'm just adding a bit of body and breath to your sound. Especially true if you put on a reverb after the analog delays. This is the Hall of Fame after. Showing with the modulation factor. Let's put the time back a little bit. Okay, so here's my delay. And yet again, this has got that second modulation setting, which might not be that apparent, but let me show you what it does to a particular sound I like using. So this is a freeze gliss setting on the Hog, so without the Meet Maude. Okay, same chords, but with the mod, with these modulation settings. Turn the feedback up right about to between 1 and 2 o'clock. It's kind of the zone. And here is just a little bit right on the edge of oscillation. The repeats are so pretty. Just gorgeous breakup. Change the delay time. So that is the Fairfield Circuitry Meet Maude analog delay. If you liked what you heard and you enjoyed this video, please subscribe below, and I will be back soon with more pedal reviews and performance videos. Thanks.